I think I just did something really stupid. I bought the cheapest art supplies that I could find. This is what $60 worth of art supplies gets you from Temu.com. And if you've ever been to an art store before, you know that $60 gets you like half a tube of paint and one paintbrush. So this is pretty ridiculous for $60. And I know why. It's Temu.com. Probably a couple child slaves had to die in order to get this to my door in a week, but their tiny hands are so good at moving packages. How else could we do it? And I'm working on getting a table here, but I spent the video budget on the supplies. So would you rather have a table or a video? You tell me. There is some logic behind all this, by the way, but let's open this stuff up, see what we got, and I'll explain it there. This is the Conte Pure Noir Black 1710 2B pencil. I've been using it for 3 or 4 years. It's one of the best charcoal pencils because it goes down nice and black and smooth, and it hits well with the paper stump. But here's the thing. These break constantly while you try to sharpen them, and sometimes you get one that's just bad and it will break the entire pencil. It's just totally worthless. So I've been looking, and I watched a Chinese academic drawing video on YouTube, and I found this brand linked under it, Mary's or Marie's. And these things are pretty good. It's 20 bucks, or 20 pencils for 12 bucks rather, and they're really nice. They're almost as good as the Conte, but not quite as dark and as creamy as the Conte. So I went searching for more of this Marie's brand, and that led me to Temu. Now on Temu, I found 36 charcoal pencils for $12 from this brand. This is medium, hard, and soft. All the grades here. I'm really excited to use these and try them out, see if they're as good as whatever this is. I don't know how this is different, but that started leading me down a rabbit hole. What else does this brand offer for so cheap? Well, I got 5 kneaded erasers for $6 and 25 pieces of Willa charcoal for like $8. And I just kept going from there. I don't know what came over me. I got a 10 pack of toned or colored carbon pencils. I don't really know what I'm gonna do with these, but I just thought I would try them while I was there. And then we got some interesting things. Paper. I love paper a lot, and it matters a lot with charcoal because the texture and the thickness of paper have vastly different results on how the charcoal applies to it. So I got this 100 sheets of 80 GSM paper. It's pretty soft. We'll see how that works. And then I got this. 30 sheets of 160 GSM paper. That's quite thick paper. That's thick enough to paint on, actually. It doesn't really feel that thick, but I don't know, it feels pretty nice. This is thick enough to paint on, and it's an 11x17 sketchbook. So this is gonna be really interesting. And then the devil whispered into my ears. This is oil paint. And not only is it oil paint, but each of these tubes was $2.25. I don't even think you can get a McChicken for that price anymore. And this is a Zorn palette. So the Zorn palette is enough to paint any portrait. It's the most bare minimum palette possible. What is that, $10 total for all of these? A little bit less than that, $9 total for all of these. We can paint a portrait with this. Let's soften a medium charcoal pencil here, and I am just absolutely in love with cheap art supplies. I think it's way more fun to do more with less than to spend a ton of money on super expensive supplies, and I've just seen so many mid-level or beginner artists working with $100+ tubes of Michael Harding paints or whatever. And then I've seen some of the best artists I know working with very poor quality brands. It really just doesn't matter that much, and I really like to experiment and try new things. It's way more fun, and limitation is oftentimes the mother of creativity. These pencils are just so waxy. They have this strange waxy texture in them. Really hard. You can see me struggling to get through it with this razor blade. Maybe this isn't the sharpest razor, but it's pretty new. I just grabbed a fresh razor blade, and the point of sharpening your pencil out nice and long like this is so that we can get a lot of charcoal exposed, about 1 inch or 1/2 inch. That will allow us to get a nice long point on our charcoal, which will stay sharper longer. We'll have more control over it. The difficulty comes is if I bite down too hard into this, I'm gonna break the charcoal. It's really soft and delicate, so I gotta take little slivers off on every side. It's like a fun little mini game. Okay, that's a good amount of charcoal. I don't think it's broken in there. That's a good sign. And I'll hit it on my sanding paper now to get it down to a really nice point. That is a nice, gnarly point on a charcoal pencil. It's gonna stay nice and sharp for us. This is the soft grade of charcoal, so I really need to take my time and go slow. This wood is so hard to get through. I've never had any wood like this. Weird. Didn't break it that time. Never mind, I broke it. If I can't be slow while sharpening a pencil, I'll never make a good piece of artwork, so I need to just take a breath here and just take my time. I always start out my beginner drawing students with Bargue plates. Charles Bargue is this guy in the 19th century who wrote a book on how to draw, and it's basically like those books where you take a circle and you add eyes to it and you turn it into a horse, but for 19th century classical art. And in typical modern fashion, people will take these ideas all the way to the excess where they'll spend 100 or 200 hours on one drawing, but if you actually look at 19th century philosophy, I think it's a lot more dynamic and fast-paced than that, and the way that these drawings were treated might have not been so literal. So I actually like to spend maybe 3 to 10 hours on a drawing. Even shorter ones can be great as long as you're understanding the basic ideas. And for a lot of beginners, that's just 2D proportions and simplifications. But some of these more advanced Bargue drawings have really nice lighting, and that's what I want to capture, that understanding of subtle lighting and halftone. And this is a really nice scale to do this figure at. This is a really hard Bargue plate, and I've never tried it before too. Most of the other ones I've done 10 times, so I'm excited. Let's get this started. I was moving my setup and I dropped the notebook onto a metal aluminum panel, and yeah, I dented it. So that's what that is if you're wondering. Otherwise, I just counted the number of heads in here and laid it in. I think it was about 4.5 or so. I've taken a day off, so I'm back at this the next day. And I really want to get this drawing done, and then we'll use some warm and cool tones from our colored charcoal pencils here in order to, well, just experiment with these, but also we can create a warm, cool relationship in the lights, just like old master paintings. I'll explain that later. Okay, now is later. These parts take like an hour each, by the way. All right, drawing is pain. I got my cool colored pencil. This is like a greenish brown and then a orangey red one. If you look at old master paintings like Rubens or Titian, they will have these very warm reddish brown shadows and these cool grayish white lights. And that creates a warm relationship in the shadows and a cool relationship in the lights. And then as you transition into those shadows, you get a very cool edge right where it transitions in. It's called a light sandwich, where it goes warm, cool, warm, essentially moving back and forth between these things. So I think we can replicate that using these colored pencils here. They're called colored charcoal. I don't know if that exists. That doesn't really make sense to me. Maybe they were burning bright red wood. I don't know, but let's try these things out. This isn't waxy like a Prismacolor pencil, actually. This is a lot more like a chalky pastel feeling to it. I'm sure it's gonna spread out nicely. I might use a paper stump to pull it out, but I wanna just get a nice simple tone in here, which is taking some time because I'm not sure if it's the texture of the paper, which is pretty smooth, or it's just this pencil. It doesn't go down very smooth, so I'm having to layer it on a little bit, really work on the evenness of those shadows. Then I'll use my brown pencil and begin to pull that out with hatch marks. The beauty with these Bargue drawings are how the values are organized. The lights stay very light and the darks stay very dark. And where Bargue works, and he puts all that attention, is into the transitioning tones at the edges of those shadows. That's where you get the form change, and the lights stay pretty much the white of the paper. So not only is it more efficient, this is just the way that light works. Light tends to stay very light in those planes facing the light, and it tends to get very dark right at the edge of the shadow. That's where it's rounding a corner. Every new value you have is rounding away from the light source. And so it's these edges, these transitions, that are the most important part in every drawing. This is what I do when I draw. I always find my drawing, put in a flat shadow, and then work on those edges, those areas of greatest change. That's where you get the bang for your buck. And that's where you can get a lot done very quickly and efficiently. So not only is this a really beautiful drawing, but it's very efficient too. It's why I'm not a huge fan of spending 100, 200 hours on Bargue drawings. I understand you're really locking in those proportions, you're getting everything right, but look at 19th century art. Look at the philosophy of the 19th century students, especially towards the latter half of the 19th century. The students of Jerome, they were painting and drawing extremely fast using the paper stump, 12-hour figure drawings. Those drawings had incredible efficiency to them. And they were very, very aware of the construction and the form. I just erased this part here because I want to pull my hatch marks in the direction that this deltoid muscle is coming down and inserting into the arm with. That's how you pull the paper stump. That's how you pull your hatch marks at those transitions. It's all the same. The brown wasn't very cool. It kind of just looked like more red. So I've started to push this green into the halftones. Am I making tremendous mistakes right now? Yeah, this is pretty weird, but just having fun. And using up all these materials too. This head has been in my nightmares the past couple days. It leans backwards at such an odd angle, you can't use any of the standard proportions. If you're trying to count head heights, it's just at a weird enough angle to the side that it makes it really difficult to know the exact size of what you're measuring. And this is kind of where I think that optical drawing techniques of drawing that we're just using our measurements or angles to break things down like a lot of people use to draw the bark plates. This is where these ideas, they tend to fall apart a little bit here. When you get into these strange rotations, where you get into these strange tilts of things, we can't use just breaking things down into angles so much. We have to rely a little bit on our knowledge of the form, of the anatomy. It's important to conceptualize this as a cylinder going back, and each line is going to wrap around. I'm certainly not dialed in all the way in the proportions here, and I'm only spending a certain number of hours on this drawing. If I wanted to get this to the highest level possible, it's just an investment of time. Let's see how well this responds to the stump. I mean, this is kind of dirty. I've sanded off a lot of that charcoal, but I want to start pulling my halftones out, rounding around each of these forms so that we can create smoother gradations. I shouldn't actually destroy the hatch marks that I put down, I hope. Here we have a big egg form for the rib cage, and I just pull out like I'm going alongside that egg form around this rib cage area. This is the opening. The 19th century art, it's just genius because of how simple and well made it is. That's what makes it brilliant. It's not just about how beautiful or how realistic it is. There's a lot more to it than that. It's how efficient they made this stuff, how simple they thought about these ideas, and that's why I'm making a video about cheap materials. You think the people in the 19th century were only using the most expensive materials possible? Most of these students were dead broke, barely making ends meet, living in closets, like literal closets. They didn't have some sort of housing authority back then. What matters is your understanding of form, your understanding of these principles, and how they can be applied in the simplest, most elegant way possible. Let's make sure I don't get my halftones too dark here. I want to keep my lights nice and light. And these bark drawings are just really brilliant. They show so much about form, proportion, and how we can use these ideas very elegantly. I always come back to these simple mechanics because that's what matters the most. And if I can get cheap materials and execute on big ideas, well, then I'm just doing better, right? I've seen so many people with the $200 Michael Harding paint set. That's probably like 2 tubes from Michael Harding. And they just don't understand form or lighting. And if they invested the time or the money they spent into those materials on some classes, or just the time is free for the most part, then they would have made much stronger paintings. That's very freeing. When I hit these shadows with the stump, they do smooth together. It's not a very deep dark black. I could put some of that black charcoal in there, but I'm okay with this not being the darkest drawing ever. It's all right. I like how this charcoal blends in though. This could be mixed into a whole lot of different mediums and it wouldn't get waxy and destroy the paper or reject everything else on top of it. After I've kicked everything in with the stump, I have to come back and re-put my accent points on and re-accentuate my hatching, because I think that's a strong description of the form in this drawing. It doesn't need to be hatched, but it's just something that I like to do. And I've gotten a pretty good use out of all the materials here, except for the paints, and everything is working great. This is the same quality that I would get at any art store pretty much, and these pencils were like probably 30 cents a piece or something like that. Pretty impressive stuff all around. I actually had high hopes for this because Chinese academic artists are very good and they have to be using at least some level of decent materials, but I'm pretty sure I could pick up a charcoal pencil pretty much anywhere and make good use out of it, especially in a format like this. Different shirt, different day, same me. I like Marie's. This is the sketchbook that I got from them. I got my charcoal pencils and my charcoal colored pencils, the kneaded erasers. I got a handful of these. I like everything. They all feel fine. I'm not really sure what bad quality charcoal feels like. I've used a bunch of different brands, and some brands are better than others. Like I like Conte, but they break all the time. That's what started this whole thing. And those Contes, they hit a nice creamy dark black. these, they get about 90% of the way there, which is good enough for me. And actually, if it's 90% of the way there and 1/10 the price, then that's actually a really good deal. And I think that's totally fine for 99% of the work. That's all you really need to learn. I think people push high quality art supplies too much when really the masters, great people of the past, and people living all around the world today use a whole bunch of variety of different materials to create incredible work. And your knowledge is what informs your art, your skill level, your understanding. If you just give me a piece of copy paper and a Ticonderoga pencil, I can probably make a decent drawing. That's probably all I need to learn about 95% of drawing. Some more niche shading things as we get to the higher levels of understanding light. Of course, you're gonna want better materials, but really, this is probably what most people need. And I like working with these new ideas. I like challenging these ideas. If we get 2 likes on this video, maybe 5 likes, I don't know if we can do that, I'll do the oil paints, and we'll put those head to head with my other oil paints, my Winsor & Newtons, which I normally use. I'm really excited to see how they perform. I think we can make some really great paintings. If you like this video, make sure to hit the subscribe. I'm growing this channel. I appreciate all of you come here from TikTok, and we're gonna keep pumping out content here because TikTok sucks.